So yeah, welcome. This is The Good, the Bad, the Rebalanced, honest lessons and opportunities from bikeshare expansion in Chicago and the region. And yeah, we can just get right into it. I'm going to let a lot of these folks introduce themselves further when they speak, but we have David Powe, who's the Assistant Commissioner for the Division of Project Development at CDOT, Sarah FioRito, who is a Transportation and Mobility Coordinator at Evanston, Remel Terry, who's the Director of Programs at Equiticity, and Ryan Ruehle, who is the Lead Planner for Strategic Planning and Policy Bureau at Cook County DoTH. And then, yeah. Not that we're playing favorites. And my name is Jane Wilberding. I am a Senior Mobility Manager at HNTB. And yeah, we're going to be really digging into bikeshare today, a very fun and enlightening topic that we have here. So I, wanted to kind of set the stage, and I think our panelists can keep us honest on any of these dates if they're wrong. But, bikeshare has had a really great and fun path in Chicago, but there's also been some wins and losses. And so, a big part of this panel is just really learning from those. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of experiences that we can really kind of learn from. And so in 2013, Divvy launched in Chicago with 75 stations. And then in 2016, it actually expanded to Oak Park and Evanston. In 2018, the Oak Park aspect of that expansion folded. But at the same time, the Forest Preserves started a pilot at that time. In 2019, the e-scooter pilot launched, and CDOT entered a long-term contract with Lyft. That was kind of a combination item, and that's still the contract that Divvy has today. Is that contract from 2019? In 2020, that's when e-bikes were more formally adopted and on the streets in Chicago. In 2021, the Forest Preserve Bike Share program folded. In 2023, the Chicago completed its citywide expansion of Divvy to all 50 wards, making it the largest service area of a bike share system in North America. And in 2024, there's the 1,000th station installed. So, this timeline is just kind of to show that there's been a lot of wins, there's been some losses, but more than anything, there's been a lot of lessons learned, and that's really what we're kind of here to dig into today. I just want to, set the stage from a broader standpoint of, what is going on with bike share on a national, international level. So both of these data points are from the US and Canada, and so you can just kind of broadly see, of course, bike share has increased since 2010, but what's really interesting is that, with the onset of scooters and e-mobility devices, that has really significantly increased a lot of the ridership trends that we've seen. They are still, biking and using pedal bikes still remains really the most common way people get around on bike share, but it's very clear that there is preferences for, different devices, and they, different types of uses, whether it's docked or dockless or scooters or e-scooters. So it's something that you really have to think about when you're, trying to deploy a system. And then kind of getting into some of the risks, because when we are kind of introducing different devices, when we're introducing different larger service areas or more riders, that increases the variables. And so, there's a lot of elements that you need to, really have a successful bike share system, whether it's having density, pricing, maintenance and operations, convenience and convenient operating hours, adequate cycling infrastructure. These are all things that really need to work in tandem to be successful. And, a lot of the vendors are kind of struggling to, at times, we have seen vendors come in and out. And so, despite the clear preference for more trips being used, there is actually this year cities with, the number of cities with systems decreased by 1%. So it's kind of an indicator, and it's an interesting fact that, vendors are kind of thinking internally about how they're kind of working on this, and cities are also thinking the same thing. So, with that, I think there's a lot to learn from what we have seen locally, and we've done a lot of great work both with Divvy and throughout the region. So I'm just going to hand it over to our panelists to hear more.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Hey, everybody. I'm David Powe with the Chicago Department of Transportation. For the last 2.5 years, I've overseen the Divvy bike share system and Lime scooter operations at the City of Chicago. Actually just stepped into a new role a few weeks ago, though, so I don't work on Divvy anymore, but I'm going to talk to you about some historical context and some of the things we've done over the last few years. So about 2.5 years ago, I stepped into this role. And I started asking people, a lot of people in this room that I see right now, what do you think about Divvy? And people told me 3 things. It costs too much, the devices aren't there when I need them, and the docks aren't anywhere where I need them. So the first thing that we tried to do at CDOT with the Johnson administration and the support of advocates around the city and the region was to stabilize pricing for Divvy. And that's why we launched a $99 membership for all new and return members for Divvy. So if you don't have a membership right now, I highly encourage you to get one. And so I'm done with my marketing pitch, and I will move on to the actual presentation. So as I mentioned, about 2.5 years ago, I jumped into this role, and what we were looking at was a complete change in commuting patterns. We've heard a lot about that today from all of our speakers. Things changed dramatically during and after the pandemic. What we do every year with Lyft Urban Solutions, who operates the Divvy system that is owned by the City of Chicago on behalf of Chicago, we renegotiate the levels of service, the numbers of devices, et cetera, that are out there on the ground. And we did not adapt that as quickly as travel patterns were changing, because we were negotiating changes every year, but things were changing every day. The governor could make one order, one CTA could make one change, and boom, you have a significant change in travel patterns. So we noticed that more and more people were wanting to use Divvy because they didn't feel safe taking transit, they didn't feel safe driving, and they wanted to be outside. And so the patterns of travel, the demand, it just was completely upended. And so what we did at CDOT was, let me go back. What we did at CDOT was evaluate what those gaps were in service, what those gaps were in the system, and how we could address pricing. The first thing that we did was actually my colleague Kyle Pfeffen, who is the station manager at CDOT and oversees the installation of all stations at Divvy, is up here in the front row, and he's probably going to roll his eyes a couple times at me today. But we decided how we could best address these problems, and we came up with a 3-pronged system. We were going to stabilize pricing, and we were going to lower it where we could. So for a 3rd year, we have frozen prices for Divvy, and we will continue to do so as long as we can. The other thing we did was we bought a significant amount of new station equipment to put it where people needed it most. In the very beginning, the place where people needed more docks and devices was the Loop. And this station on the screen is right outside of Daly Plaza. Funny story about this station: when it was getting installed, the station was closed down temporarily while we hooked it up to the electrical wiring, and a lady came up on an e-bike, and she was confused about what was going on. And I said, "Hi, Secretary Biaggi. It's good to see you. I'm David. I work at CDOT, and the station is closed temporarily, but you can dock it right here." So I got to talk to her a little bit about this new type of equipment we were buying to fill these giant gaps that we were seeing downtown. And over the last 2.5 years, we've added a tremendous amount of docking capacity, and that means that because of the algorithms that we use with Lyft to have certain service levels throughout the city, it's dock-based and it's region-based. So if you have 1,000 docks in one of our zones, then they have to say have 100 devices there at any given point. If you double that to 2,000, then they have to have 200 devices there at any given point, or they have to pay us liquidated damages. So it's a lot more complicated than that. You can FOIA our service level agreements in our contract if you want. And what we did was we expanded dramatically downtown. And what that did was it showed that the system was more reliable, and people decided, you know what? It was a little bit too expensive 4 years ago, but right now I'm noticing that the devices are there when I leave the office at 7 p.m. and it's cheaper. There's this $99 membership. So we brought people back into the system. And what we've seen is ridership skyrocket. On the screen, that's combined Divvy and Lime ridership. Lime is operating under a private business license through CDOT and BACP. But this combined ridership has skyrocketed. And this is another example of a station we installed in the loop about 1.5 years ago, and it was so successful that probably 2 days after we launched it, we were already planning an expansion. And we have been blown away at the increase in ridership, especially with e-bikes downtown. We could have never planned for that. And I think our new normal now is reevaluating ridership patterns every week instead of every year. And I think most service planners in this room probably agree that we have to be much more intentional and frequent with those reviews. So we didn't just add riders, we built a bigger system and we kept our system affordable. We had added thousands of new docks, hundreds of new stations, and right now we have been laser focused on solving the downtown problem I brought up earlier in places like Hyde Park, where 2 of the 10 busiest Divvy stations in the city are. And most people wouldn't expect that. But ridership and device availability is so unique to the travel patterns in those areas that we've really had to get laser focused on how we solve these problems in these smaller areas that, although don't have as much travel as the loop, still have a tremendous amount of surge in demand during different times of the year. We've also seen a 20% growth in year-over-year e-bike ridership, which we were definitely not expecting. The same growth for scooters was a few percentage points, and pedal bikes actually decreased, but e-bike ridership has skyrocketed. We've also upgraded all of our old, what we call lightweight stations, which are just essentially glorified bike racks, to full service stations. And that has helped bring Divvy stations where you can lock all 3 devices up to every neighborhood in the city. And as you can see on the screen, Divvy has remained affordable. The prices compared to our peer systems is somewhere in the middle. This is actually from last year, though, and our prices have stayed the same, and they will almost certainly continue to stay the same until next year and the year after. And we're very proud of that work to make sure that our system remains affordable and does not have runaway pricing like we've seen in New York City and other peer cities. And now bike share, scooter share is everywhere. It is all over the city in Evanston. And it's become not a pilot, not this thing that you use just during the pandemic. It's become an integral way to how people travel in and around the region. Where there are gaps in transit service, where there's gaps in the sidewalk, we are trying to fill those gaps with bike share. And as you can see, 13 million trips. I think that makes us the 4th largest transit system in Illinois, if you combine Lime and Divvy. So that'd be after Pace. At least that's what Tim Gustafson told me. I don't know if he's here right now, but hey, Tim. And so we're seeing this tremendous surge in ridership. Memberships have actually started to increase dramatically after years of significant decline, and we're adding more and more stations. Our well-oiled machine at CDOT with Lyft and all of our contractors is going to lead to hundreds of new stations and at least 2,000 new docks going down this year. And we're so excited to see that growth and continue to foster that growth. And I think, what we've learned is that you've got to be nimble. We did not anticipate that this surge in Divvy ridership would mean that 300% more people would be taking e-bikes to games at Wrigley Field year over year. But we did figure out very quickly, after talking to Homeland Security, OEMC, and the police department, and Alderman Lawson, that we needed to address that problem quickly. So as you can see, we've taken what was kind of chaotic outside of Wrigley Field, and we've created order. And we've learned that we've got to be more nimble, and we have to remove barriers to entry, which is why we've added docks, we've added devices, we've lowered the prices, and what we've seen is a tremendous growth in our system. So the next chapter, should Chicago have bike share? Obviously it should have bike share, and that's not the question. It's how can it become bigger? How can it become better? So right now, CDOT and Lyft are negotiating a potential 5-year extension of the contract that we have with Lyft to operate our municipal system. And the pillars of that contract discussion have been around affordability, accessibility. And when I say accessibility, I mean making sure that our public right-of-way is clear for vulnerable sidewalk users, for people with disabilities, for people with baby carriages, for children, for older adults, making sure that these devices are where they need to be and not cluttering our sidewalk, crosswalks, ramps, etc. And then the third is making sure that we have as many of these docks and devices as possible where people need them. So I hope to have updates for everyone soon on that front and can answer any potential questions about that. But bike share is growing. It will continue to grow. And now Sarah is going to tell you about its growth in Evanston.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah FioRito, and I am representing the city of Evanston today. It's great to be here. So just some quick context for folks in case you're not familiar with Evanston. So Evanston sits along the north border of Chicago. It was founded and incorporated around the same time as the city of Chicago. Like the city of Chicago, it's on the traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires Nations, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, and many other nations who have been moving in this area for a long time. So that's kind of the context on where we're at. You can kind of see it up there, up north of the city. So a little more context, city of Evanston has under 80,000 people. It's about 7.8 square miles. In addition to the city of Chicago and Lake Michigan, it's bordered by the village of Skokie and the village of Wilmette. And like Chicago, there is a culture of multimodal travel in the city of Evanston. So we do have reasonably high rates for the region of walking and biking to work, and also public transit use. So that's kind of the travel context that we're dealing with. A little more context as well. We do have some great foundations for our cycling and micromobility network in Evanston. The city has made a lot of really awesome investments over the last decade or more. That being said, like the city of Chicago and cities around the country, we do have a lot of work to do on our network. These are two examples of places that actually are still part of our formal bike network. So lots of work to do still in terms of making, cycling and micromobility options a real option for folks, especially when it comes to bike share and other things where we're trying to get folks to give these things a try. So where is Evanston's system at today? So the city of Evanston, right now, we have 14 docking stations. We have about 4 more stations than we had when we initially invested in 2016. So the system has not grown much. It hasn't really evolved that much since we've had it over the last decade. The system is fully interoperable with the city of Chicago system, other than the fact that right now we do not allow electric scooters into the city of Evanston, and we are not planning on changing that soon. We're not gonna necessarily get that much into that today. Because we are interoperable with the city of Chicago system, the amount of vehicles in Evanston at any given time does fluctuate. In general, it tends to be around 240 vehicles, with right now, depending on the time, most of those being e-bikes. And part of the reason that is right now in the city of Evanston, we have 210 docks. So we actually, for the amount of riding that's happening, we don't have a lot of docks. And so right now our system actually relies on the fact that we actually need a lot of devices that don't need to necessarily be parked in a station. So we are doing a very unprecedented and large expansion in the city of Evanston very soon. So this summer, we're actually adding 17 new stations. So 17 on top of 14, that's pretty big. And I've been managing that project in partnership with our sustainability team, Kara, and also with our partners at Lyft, who have been really awesome partners, especially Sean Madison, who's not here today. One thing I want to note about the style that we're doing this, so also thank you, Cook County, for supporting this. They did fund this, 50% of this through the Invest in Cook grant. One key thing that I want to say is our dock to bike ratio is going to get significantly higher with this. So our intention is actually not to bring a ton of more vehicles into Evanston. The intention is actually to have a place for all those vehicles to park. So we're actually moving towards that best practice kind of region of dock to bike ratios, where we're going to be almost at that 1.5, where we're going to have more docks for these vehicles to park in, so that we can have neater use and also more predictable use, so people can actually find vehicles, especially the classic bikes. The other thing I'll say is that this is the first time where City of Evanston is actually going to have Divvy on the lakefront. We're going to have another station at ETHS. We're going to have a bunch of new sites around downtown, Northwestern, West Evanston, near the North Shore Channel. So it's a pretty exciting for the city. And this is just kind of an overview. You can see all these numbers on the post expansion are new stations. So a lot more stations. Couple things on ridership. So since basically the beginning of the system to the end of 2025, we're still at under 300,000 rides. I did kind of divide that up into like an understanding of kind of per day, per dock. So because we are investing in the docks more than the vehicles themselves, we've invested in classic bikes, although Lyft has supplemented e-bikes into the system. So basically, we're looking at our investment per dock. And right now, if we average it across the entire year, we know that ridership is slower in the winter. Long story short, we're getting about 0.4 rides per day per dock. I think that's pretty low. I think we would probably want to be at least getting a couple rides out of each dock ideally, and just getting a lot of like action in the system. So this rolling stock that we're investing in, that we have invested in, and this dock infrastructure is actually getting more use. So that's something that we're thinking about as we're looking at making the network more useful. So long story short, some areas of opportunity. So I've split it into kind of two categories. So one is usage, and then one is more the system side. So in terms of the rider, some areas of opportunity are, first of all, as David mentioned, reducing sidewalk riding. We have a lot of residents in Evanston who are very angry about the influx of higher speed vehicles, micromobility vehicles on the sidewalk, especially e-bikes, and they're over it. We've had some serious injuries. My uncle actually got injured in downtown Chicago. So it's not okay. We're saying, okay, we need to be investing in our on-street network and also keeping our sidewalk network safe, and they do need to happen together, obviously. The second thing is improving dockless parking practices. This is a photo that I took. This is in the middle of downtown Evanston. This bike is just literally in the middle of two crosswalks, and I see this all the time. It's really irritating. I don't know why people think this is appropriate, but there's a lot of things that people do in this world that are inappropriate, so that's probably the least of them. So yeah, better improving docking practices. And then the other thing is just encouraging safe and skillful riding. So we have a lot of people on the street today who are riding private bicycles, publicly owned bicycles, and a lot of folks actually have never learned skills to do these things. A lot of people actually don't ever get any formal traffic safety training, period, in this culture that we live in. So that's something that we're looking at tackling from the system side. So areas of opportunity for the program, and this is obviously an ongoing conversation with CDOT, our partners at Lyft, and just all of our regional partners in the room. So one thing that I will say is increasing a broad understanding of how Divvy works. A lot of people don't know how Divvy works. There's not, I would say, like a broad general understanding of the pricing structure, of how to begin. I think folks in this room, this is a very skewed audience. Obviously, we're like enthusiastic about this topic. I hear over and over and over again, people being like, I tried it once and I got charged $12, or like, hey, I tried this and I don't understand, or like, what is this? Oh, is this for me? I can use that. So a lot of people don't understand how Divvy works still. And that's something that we gotta update. And kind of figure out how we are really like reaching folks and building awareness, not only that the program is available to people, but also how it works. And to go deeper into the pricing, I just realized all these numbers are ones, sorry guys. So the other thing in this as well, as David touched on, thank you, is pricing structure. So pricing is still, big picture if we're looking at the future of these systems, especially compared to using your own bicycle that you own or even own e-bike. These prices can add up really fast, even if you're a member, 20 cents a minute for an e-bike or 33 cents a minute for a scooter. It adds up, especially for folks on more limited incomes who maybe aren't working in the professional transportation realm or planning realm or engineering realm. So that's something that we definitely got to be thinking about as we look big picture at the regional future of bike share. Another thing that I'll say is just deepening our regional coordination and regional investment in the system. So for example, right now, I know CDOT invests in some really awesome software to be internally tracking how Divvy is working. At the city of Evanston, we rely on Lyft to provide us with all of the data that we see. We're actually not tracking that because we, at this point, have not invested as a small community in our own tracking software. That being said, shout out to the CDOT team and also to Ruehle for coordinating with us. We might get to kind of jump on CDOT's software package for a couple $1,000s, which would be great. I think that's something that as we're looking to regional broadening of the system, I think just having more formal coordination on these topics, especially because when a small municipality like Evanston, when we're negotiating with a huge for-profit company, Lyft, for our contracts and things like that, it's just a very skewed relationship, and I don't really see that as a model that is gonna take regional bike share into the future here. I don't think tiny municipalities should be negotiating with a company like Lyft. The other thing that I'll say is, just going back to the other point, is we definitely want to be increasing ridership through promotion, education programs, and build out of the infrastructure network. So we definitely have a lot of supplementary work to do to actually support bike share. So where to next? This is a photo that I also took. This is in downtown Evanston. This is this is our busiest station next to Davis Street, Purple Line stop, and also the Davis bus station. So big focus for us once we lay these 17 new stations down is to promote. So we're gonna be promoting the membership because we want people to get good value. We want them to pay the lower prices. We're gonna be promoting the Divvy for Everyone membership. We're gonna have our youth mobility ambassadors, our inaugural year of our youth team. We're gonna be out on the streets, just letting people know throughout the entire warm season what's going on. We're also gonna have Lyft out there doing some demonstrations at some choice events about how to actually use the vehicles. Another thing that we're doing is we're hosting our second annual free transportation education series, which is going to include education for scooter riders, e-bike riders, bike riders, learn to ride programs, intro to bike mechanics. Like, we're just want to get the education out to the community because we want people to have these skills. And that's why we are also going to be piloting, thank you to IDOT for funding this, we are going to be piloting an in-depth, in-school, in PE class on bike with a public bike fleet that we are investing in in two fifth grade grades in the city of Evanston, including an access program for students who receive free and reduced lunch to actually own bikes. So we really do want to deeply build these skills in the community because people just need transportation safety skills as a life skill. Finally, we are also working on our bike plan update. which is going to be improving the actual street side conditions so that we can support this, in addition to investing in our bicycle rack and micromobility rack infrastructure. And then we're going to be evaluating and seeing how all these investments move us forward. So thank you very much. All right, I'm going to pass it to Remel.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. It's still morning. It's not noon yet. Good morning. So my name is Remel Terry. I currently serve as the Interim Senior Director of Impact for Equiticity. For those of you who are not familiar with Equiticity, we are a racial equity movement, and our specific area of focus is transit, transportation, mobility, environmental justice issues. So I'm here to talk about our vision for a mobility hub, which we call the Go Hub, and how our bike share program compares with what the city is already doing. And so when we think about that, we see what CDOT and DoTH are doing as a complement to the work that we're doing with the Go Hub. And that is because with the Go Hub, we're looking to not only provide access to micromobility options, but we're looking at the importance of local control. And when we think about communities like Lawndale, which is where we're looking to build out our first mobility hub, there is a lot more work that is required, sort of what Sarah touched upon in her presentation, in order to socialize people around the importance of cycling or accessing different mobility options in the neighborhood. And so I just want to make it clear that we truly respect what DoTH and CDOT is doing. We have a great relationship with them. And again, we see their work more as complementary to what we're doing. And the work with what we're bringing with the Go Hub is a deeper dive in what many of these communities actually need. So for us, the decision frame is truly straightforward. If our goal was to only create an occasional access to rides, then it would make sense. Like, hey, why are you all doing all of this work? But when we think about our purpose and with the Go Hub, we truly do have our community in mind. And so with what we're offering is, first, we think about a mixed fleet. So we're looking at offering access to EVs, access to e-bikes, e-cargo bikes, as well as e-scooters. And if any of you all are familiar with a community like Lawndale, they have a lot of gaps, right, in access to different options and reliable transportation. It's also a community that has one of the highest rates of individuals who do not have access to a reliable vehicle. So there are a lot of different challenges that are happening in communities like Lawndale, and we really want to make sure that we're filling those gaps where needed and being what our community desires. And so when we think about this work, it requires trust, right? When you come into a community, we think about how cycling and things of that nature have not been traditionally marketed to Black residents. That's a fact, like we know that. So many people oftentimes don't make the connection of this being for them. So there's a very important piece of our work where we have to have those relationships within the community to build trust, to help people to understand the benefits, to help people to know that these things are for them. And the way in which we do that at our mobility hub, which unlike a traditional mobility hub, we will have a physical facility. So there'll be someone there who is engaging them. There'll be someone who is available to answer questions. There'll be training components associated with this. Because again, we understand that in our communities, this is not a one size fits all, right? Like not everyone has a quick trip that they're making. Some people have to take children to school. Some people need to go to the grocery store. Some people may need to take multi-trips to different places in and throughout their neighborhood or in adjacent communities. And so we want to make sure that, again, we're addressing some of those things that may not be addressed through a traditional bike share program. So what are we doing with our process? We will have a membership fee that is set to low to no cost, because what we understand, the Divvy for All Everyone program is phenomenal, but we know that that is still not meeting some of the needs of those who are at a different level, right? Like we know, we think about what's happening with the federal government and those who are on SNAP benefits and all of those things, right? They may not have all of the documentation or have all of the information in order to access that. But if they're coming to the Go Hub and they're a community resident, we're able to better work with them to ensure that they're getting access to what they need. Like I already mentioned, having access to that mixed fleet, because while we do, and we're proponents and advocates of cycling, we know that everything may not be done by a bike, and so we do want to provide access to EVs and other options. We also think about the young person who may need access to reliable transportation going to work. There are so many different layers to this that we want to always make sure we're accommodating. And then the training and community activation. That piece, again, is so very important. We've done research at Equiticity to learn about how people in Lawndale choose their mode of choice, and a lot of that is based on how safe they feel. So when we think about, we've had a lot of strides in our city as it relates to bike paths and contraflow options and all of the things, but when you think about the broader city, that isn't the same, right? There's still gaps and opportunities there. And so we have to have real conversations and trainings to activate people, again, to make them feel comfortable and safe that this is a viable option, that this is a reliable option. And to what something I just want to point out, when I was listening to you, Sarah, I was like, oh, those are things I want to mention, right? People don't know the rules of the road. They don't know how to do these things safely. And so, again, that is part of their access. It won't just be you can go somewhere, get this bike, and go about your business. No, with us, you're going to have to go through training, because we want to make sure that you are doing it safely and you are aware of the rules of the road, because we've seen so many incidences, and we want to make sure that we're preparing folks for what we're explaining that is so important for them to partake in. And then the other piece is this workforce development component and economic justice, right? So when we think about all of what we would be offering at the Go Hub, we're tying that to our workforce development initiatives. So we're looking to expand beyond our current youth workforce apprenticeship bike force, where young people learn about the e-bike battery, the basics of electricity, how to disassemble and reassemble a bike, to building out a curriculum for EV mechanics, right? Because we will have charging infrastructure on our land. And so we're tying to folks, not only are you getting access to these new devices, but we also will have a program so that we can begin to hire locally for folks to do the repairs and do all of the things that are needed, with us having these devices under our authority. So why does this model work best for the Go Hub? It really matches the mission, our neighborhood, because we are really focused on not just what a great idea is, but how are we reaching the heart to connect folks and making sure that they're benefiting from this. Because we have individuals, again, in our communities who oftentimes may see these options, but do not see them as something for them. They are like, oh, I don't know who that's for. Maybe when someone comes in the community to visit, they have this opportunity to utilize this. And so we have a responsibility of ensuring that they understand that it is for them, and it's centered around equity. We're also thinking about transit access. We also care a lot about the first mile, last mile connectivity issues that exist in communities like Lawndale. So currently, we only have, on the Lawndale end of that neighborhood, one train stop, the 21st Street Pink Line train. That's the only option for a train in the Lawndale community. And when you think about some of the further west portions, they barely even have access to buses. And so we think about us being centrally located just adjacent to the 21st Street Pink Line, and people able to travel by bike, scooter, whichever they prefer, right, to grab a device, go home, come back the next day, and it's all good. It's not a big deal, or they're not concerned about the cost. It's still very affordable. Also, when it comes to the climate, right, we help to shift the way people are thinking about cars, because that piece is very important. We don't want to necessarily just tell people, hey, don't drive cars, but we're not providing them with an option that can get them to and from the things that they need. Again, safety and trust is a very big thing, and the workforce component is tied into all that we're looking to do, because something I also have not mentioned yet is that we have a partnership with one of our local mental health service providers to also provide individual and group therapy sessions, because this is a really big deal that you're asking people to change their mindset and how they choose their mode of choice. And so we want to make sure that we're serving them holistically, serving all the different components of those who we're engaging in community. And we also want this to be community power, right? We want people to understand the power that they have, because the more people that we can get engaged in cycling and scooters or alternative modes to transportation, the more we can put emphasis on the need for our public entities to make improvements in these neighborhoods. Anybody in here familiar with Pulaski Road? Yeah, so if you're anywhere in Lawndale, if you're familiar with it in Lawndale, it's bad. It's really bad. So when we're doing what we call our community mobility rituals, we don't even really like to ride on Pulaski because it's not safe at all. The curb it's like double curbs, because at some point someone built another curb on top of the previous curb. Like, it's horrible. But we believe that having our Go Hub there, having people on bikes and things of that nature, we can start to change and say, hey, this area is really active. We now need to reimagine what Pulaski Road looks like and how we can make this safer for cyclists and for community to engage. And it's not even as great for those who are walking down the sidewalk if you're not aware. So there's so many levels to this, and I just think it's really important for us to think about the whole picture, because while we are talking about bike share, we're looking at transforming lives. So when we think about DoTH and CDOT, there are so many strengths, right? Because we think about how the Go Hub is going to be a neighborhood-owned model, and while we do envision having multiple Go Hubs around the city of Chicago, not every community will eventually have a Go Hub. And so the scale and visibility of CDOT, right, like as David has already pointed out, they are everywhere now, which we're very excited about because we take advantage of them often when we're doing our community bike rides. They're also made strides towards more affordability. So it has become more affordable. We're actually going to be partnering with DoTH on their DoTH for Everyone program. So working with local organizations to get them and their staff registered into the system, and then to take them on a brief bike ride just to show them how that process can work. And public investment matters. It matters when our public entities are in alignment with the mission and vision of our work, because that way we're working in tandem and it's complementary. And again, if someone isn't in Lawndale where this Go Hub will be, they still have access to bikes and et cetera when they're in Garfield or when they're in Little Village and other places. So when we think about why for the Go Hub, I just want to highlight again some of those things that I've pointed out a little earlier. Even with the discounts that we see with the DoTH for Everyone program, there is still a significant gap. And so, as I stated, we're looking at low to no costs to address the concerns of Lawndale residents who it is a community, predominantly low to moderate income. The eligibility gaps, the trip design mismatch, because again, not everyone is going from point A to point B. It may require a little bit more time, and what we're offering as well will be an e-bike library, so that people have an option at short-term, long-term leasing. So if someone needs to come to us and say, hey, I need to have access to this e-bike for 3 months, right? That will be an option for them, because we want to ensure, right, the goal is to improve the overall quality of life. It's not necessary from our perspective to make a profit from this work. And also wanting to highlight the importance of the wraparound services that are needed when you're dealing with communities like Lawndale. And I also want to highlight where we've done some preliminary work in Bronzeville as well to address the transit inequities. And on that side of things, what we've seen a lot is a need to make it more accommodating for seniors. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So that's a piece where community organizations should be doing that work. I wouldn't necessarily expect all of the public agencies to get to that granular level. And so that's why I think it's important for us to have this conversation to show we have the public investment, and here is how we take that a step further as an organization. And so here are some of the places where we think about how it complements, right? As I stated, Divvy has more of your commercial use. When we think about the GoHub model, it's going to be mobility and behavior change in communities that we think about. It's not just, again, a random trip here or there. It becomes a lifestyle for those residents. The membership is per minute when we think about the Divvy CDOT model, but for us, it's going to be your time of a day, like if you want it for a day, 2 days, 3 days, so forth and so on. So one of the other things I just want to think about is like the engagement. What we see now with the Divvy for Everyone program, which is great, is that this is an opportunity for organizations like Equiticity to partner with them and to help engage folks with the system, some of the challenges that Sarah has pointed out. But when it comes to our devices, that's already embedded into how we will be operating. And so, what does success look like for us? We really want to make sure that we have members that are enrolled, that are taking advantage of all that we have to offer with the different devices. We want to see the equity, right? Like those who are traditionally left out of some of these opportunities, we now have them engaged and they see and view this mode of transportation, these alternative modes of transportation, as reliable. We also see as many car trips being avoided. We also have folks feeling safer in their community, feeling safer to choose an alternative mode of transportation outside of a car. The workforce aspect, having more people ready and engaged in the pipeline. We know that we are still, even with all of the changes that may be happening, green is still the way. And so we want to make sure that our young people and our other community residents are prepared for the workforce opportunities that will be available. And then people feel empowered, right? They feel connected. They're out in community. They feel activated, and they understand the importance of how they can impact change. And so that is all for me. I have my contact information. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to talk about Cook County's report.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I think it is still morning just by a few more minutes, so we're good on that front. My name is Ryan Ruehle. I'm with the Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways and with our Strategic Planning and Policy Bureau, folks right over here. And I was the project manager for the Cook County Bike Share Feasibility Study. We were very fortunate to have the assistance of HNTB Corporation as well as Muse Community and Design. My partner in this was Jane Wilberding as the project manager on the consultant side. And I also wanted to point out that I had the easy job with the study and managing that. We're now turning it over to Catherine Janensky from Cook County DoTH for handling the implementation and next steps. So why do we want to study suburban bike share? Well, first of all, we had a number of planning documents already published which called for us to do this. The first was our current long-range transportation plan, which is connecting Cook County. That was published in 2016. And if you're interested in learning more about our next long-range transportation plan, please come to the 2 o'clock session today for a discussion with Superintendent Killen. So, shameless plug. 2 of the plans that the LRTP called for, though, were modal plans for a bike plan and for a transit plan. Those are both published in 2023, just a couple of years ago, and bike share was one of the top recommendations for both of those plans. And thinking about it from the transit plan specifically, as Remel said here, with the transit access as a first mile, last mile connection issue, that's really how we were seeing this as well. The folks who tend to take bike share tend to come from public transit a lot of times, so that was important. And we also would not have picked up on the need to do this had it not been for all the great work that the City of Chicago and City of Evanston had done with the DIVI program and it being as strong of a program as it was. I wanted to mention that too. The Cook County Forest Preserve District was also our partner in this study. They were with us every step of the way. They reviewed all of our deliverables, and as it was mentioned earlier, I think by Jane, they did have a bike share program earlier on in 2018, and like a lot of other things during COVID, it kind of folded as a result of that, but they're still very interested in having bike share. And for those of you who have ridden your bikes in a Cook County Forest Preserve, you know that it's a wonderful experience being on a trail out in nature, so we wanted to make sure that that's being well incorporated into the work that we did with the study. So this is really the main question that we were trying to answer with the study, which was how do we assess what areas are prime for bike share, specifically in suburban Cook County? So we're trying to look at what areas are mature already or ripe enough where they've got all the things in place currently as we can measure with data. So we have this Venn diagram here. It's kind of showing the different analyses or categories of analyses that our team conducted to try to answer this question. So the first is the turquoise bubble there, the robust transit system. Mentioned that before, but what we were really looking at was the high frequency transit routes, high ridership stations. So these are going to be all the popular CTA and metro stations, high frequency pace and CTA bus routes, pulse lines, BSB, all that kind of thing. The second area that we took a look at was the ample points of interest. For the planners in the room, these are all the things that we would typically look at for a transportation project, population and employment density, hospitals, universities, other points that folks are trying to get to within the communities, and importantly as well, the Cook County Forest Preserves. Every zone that we looked at that we tried to identify for evaluating had to have a Cook County Forest Preserve in it. So that was a critical part of the analysis too. The third area was the optimal bike network. And in my mind, this is really the glue that kind of ties things together, is that you really have to have safe bicycling infrastructure in place in order to get folks from a transit station to another point of interest within a suburban community or a forest preserve. So we have in our Cook County Bike Plan the low-stress bike network identified. These are places that already have infrastructure or safe bike routes or other areas that are planned for it, and kind of using that as our base for figuring this out. So we took a look at all these analyses. We did a lot of ArcGIS work and creating different maps, joining data layers together and such to come up with some zones that we could score. And what you're seeing on the screen here, this map is actually kind of a second screen. As Jane will probably recall, we had some much more blobular shaped zones that we had kind of circled with some qualitative analysis, but then kind of tried to form them up with the municipal borders that you can see in the map there. So these are the first 10 zones that we took a look at, and we scored. All the colors in the bar chart here correspond to those 3 categories of analysis I just showed you. So you can kind of see how the different communities shook out. And then we basically took the top 5 to prioritize. So you can see on the map, this is kind of the main recommendation coming out of our study. These are the areas in which we feel that bike share would do well in within suburban Cook County. So 5 zones, 32 municipalities. You can see them all listed on the slide here. we really are hopeful that we can see bike share proliferate in these areas too. I also wanted to kind of compare how this looks with the divvy system as it has grown over time. So as David was mentioning in his presentation there, you can see the original phase of the divvy network along the lakefront as well as the city of Evanston in light blue, and then getting darker as it had grown throughout the years. One thing to point out, or a few things to point out here, is that all of the suburban zones that we have identified, they're all roughly equidistant from the downtown core. They all follow these historic growth patterns away from the city of Chicago, and they are similar in size to previous divvy expansions as well. And then the last thing is that they are contiguous with the current divvy network. One of the other things we did with our study, just to kind of ground truth things a little bit, is to understand how our peers are doing nationally. So we interviewed folks from about, I think, 7 or so different bike share providers throughout the country, places as small as Omaha, Nebraska, all the way up to Detroit and Philadelphia. But the two that most closely paralleled our situation here in Cook County were Blue Bikes in Boston and Capital Bike Share in Washington, D.C. So these are both examples of a system in which there was a central city that had, or a big city that had a bike share program that had then expanded out into its suburban periphery and had multiple suburban partners as part of their program. 3,000 bikes each in these two different systems. In Boston, it's 5 different jurisdictions. In DC, it's 7. And it's been a little while since we had these interviews. It's possible they have even more partners now. And in each case, they have kind of a coalition or folks, some sort of a approach that they can have everybody opt into the system. So in Boston, it's their Metropolitan Planning Organization, their CMAP equivalent, which is MAPC, which if you notice is just the C in CMAP being brought at the end. They act as a convener for those municipalities to opt in. They provide the boilerplate language for the intergovernmental agreements and such, and they can get folks set up who want to be a participant in their program. And in DC, they have a board of representatives, one from each jurisdiction, and I believe a rotating chair assertive situation there. In both examples, though, this is how they're able to get folks in and integrated. So I will point out, though, in both of these instances, these systems are both smaller than the system here in Chicago and Evanston. I think we are the second largest by ridership. Our bike share program here in the city of Chicago and Evanston, but nonetheless, they are still ahead of us in terms of how to, have this level of collaboration and coordination with their suburban municipalities. One other interesting finding from the DC network as well, for me at least, was that they have not only just one big kind of blob as their bike share zone, but a bunch of other smaller ones, kind of like islands or an archipelago, if you will, of different zones. So you, as somebody who is renting a bike share device, if you want to go through another area that does not have bike share, that's okay, so long as you are parking or picking up the device within one of those 2 zones. That works. I mention that because we have a lot of other communities in Cook County who are also interested in having bike share that were not in the original zones that we identified. So there's definitely a path forward for those who are interested and want to do this. I'm not going to get too much into this slide. We've talked a lot today with the other panelists here about how to design a bike network, a bike share network, but all things you should be considering and looking at, from where to place the bike share dock or kiosk within, between the curb or the sidewalk or such, as well as the land uses and other configurations. One thing, though, was the determining density and distribution aspect of this. These are kind of the things that drive costs the most. So if you want to have a lower density system, that's going to be the lower cost option. Typically, that may have more dockless bikes in it, whereas the higher density network is going to be more higher cost, as you can imagine. You can see some of the prices of the vehicles there as well. If you want to have an e-bike, classic bike, docked, dockless, these things all matter in terms of how much it costs. And additional cost variables as well, thinking about installing a bike share dock. You need to have electricity to bring to that. There's permitting, there's other things involved with that. The rebalancing of the system as well. If there's a lot of docked bikes, you need to have somebody go out, a vendor, labor costs, all that kind of thing. But the point here is that this can be highly customized to an individual community's need. And I think that's important for thinking about suburban communities within Cook County. Some, like Oak Park, I'll mention, in their bike plan, they mentioned they want to have bike share back in their community. And I think they want to have that high density system where there's lots of docks, lots of opportunities for folks to get a bike and to move around. Whereas another community may just have, let's just say, a university and a metro or CTA station nearby, and they just want to be able to make that connection possible. That can work too. It's all kind of how you want to tailor it. So where do we go from here? Kind of looking at our next steps, we did host some initial zone-wide meetings with the municipalities that we identified. There were 5 of them. Anyone from any municipality could come. We presented our study findings to them and solicited initial interest, and there was a lot of interest. I think is kind of the key takeaway from there. A lot of our suburban communities do want to have bike share in their systems and to be able to grow the Divvy network overall. Next steps, we're going to publish our report on the county website sometime over the next couple of weeks, right, Catherine? So hopefully you'll be able to access that and get into more of the details and information from our findings here. From there, we want to have continued discussions with those municipalities, develop the details, see who really wants to commit and be a part of this, as well as the individual stations, the balance of hybrid, docked, dockless, e-bike, classic bike. All those things will be important for developing costs. And then finally, thinking about funding, how do we pay for all of this? There are federal grant opportunities out there. Not a lot of federal grants are being given at the moment, but there's other opportunities as well, such as private sponsorship. If you noticed in Boston, they were called Blue Bikes because it was Blue Cross and Blue Shield, which is a sponsor of that. So lots of different opportunities to think about as we go into the future and try to get folks riding. So thank you, that's all.
Does this work? Oh, okay, great. Wait, does it work? So now we have about like 10, 15 minutes left. So Q&A, we want to make sure that there's time for you guys to ask questions. So I will kind of run around. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks. This is directed to David from CDOT. So given that e-bikes have exploded across the last couple of years, including me, I use one every day to get to work, and I love it. But what's the percentage, I guess, of the e-bike and e-scooter share? Just with the increase in e-mobility, there's also a known safety component of that, and uptick in injuries, particularly with scooters. We're in Chicago where the weather really affects the quality of the asphalt, and a small pothole is going to send a scooter flying versus a person on an e-bike. So how is the city approaching that discussion, if there's any marketing materials going out to address the safety component?
Totally. Great questions. I'm going to start with the scooter safety component. We have seen a tremendous uptick in ridership, but we haven't seen a proportionate increase in injuries. Like the ratio of rides to injury has not increased. So yes, there have been an increase in the actual number, but we don't see scooters as getting more unsafe. In fact, we think that we're creating safer conditions to scoot and ride in the city by building more and more low-stress bikeways networks throughout the city. About 3 months ago, the city launched a scooter safety campaign geared towards educating 3 groups of people on safe scooter ridership: children, parents of children, and riders that use Lime and Divvy. The children were mostly targeting people that are riding personal scooters, and then parents of those children riding personal scooters. So what we've done as part of that campaign is launched 90-day ad blitz. So if you see any digital sign throughout the city, the digital ad panels downtown, the digital billboards along the highway, there is an ad campaign targeting making sure that people ride a scooter one at a time, they ride it in a bike lane, and that they don't ride it on a sidewalk, and they wear a helmet. We've also updated all of our educational material that we use at CDOT through our program called Safe Ambassadors. Streets are for everyone. Remel works with them a lot. And so we have a group of about 10 educators that go around to schools throughout the city, and they teach safe bike riding, and they teach learn to ride classes, They go to events, cycling events, and they bring helmets. They work with our Bike Chicago distribution program, where we give away about 1,500 bikes a year, along with safety equipment to people who need it. And they educate people on that. Well, they're going to start educating people on scooters as well. And so as part of that, all of the educational materials we use at the city, we've done a complete overhaul. We're working on our website updates too. That takes a little bit of time to make sure that all of the bike education that we're doing also includes scooter education as well. In terms of like the ridership, there are more scooter rides per year in Chicago than there are e-bike rides, but that is, the e-bike trips are quickly catching up. And last year there were a lot more scooter trips than e-bike trips, but e-bike ridership has just blown us away over the last couple of years. And then I think that's all of your questions. In terms of fleet mix, I have an email that I'll show you later. I'll just have to search for it. So, yeah.
Hi. I was curious for a little more insight on the pricing structure of Divvy. And I know affordability is a key goal of the program. What I'd like some insight in, I've never understood, is like, why is there a membership fee at all? And clearly that's not Chicago only. That's, all the systems do that. Whereas like, I don't need a CTA membership to ride the train. So, why is it kind of structured like that? And what kind of are the drivers of not just the price, the membership price, but like the unlock price or the, the per mile price? Like what's kind of driving those decisions on specific prices versus, is it, we have to, a certain percentage of the program has to, pay for itself, or, what are the other factors that kind of go into those considerations?
Great questions. I was a junior in college when this all got sorted out and we launched Divvy memberships. So I don't have all the historical context there for Chicago, but I will say having a private operator like Lyft operate your bike share system, they see the memberships as a way to have upfront capital that's guaranteed. And so most private companies, Netflix, Hulu, whatever it might be, they have the same model. And so that is just a way to be guaranteed a certain amount of income, so you can plan a year in advance, quarter by quarter, and then you can utilize, like last year or last quarter, 16.5% of people didn't renew. I think we can safely anticipate that between like 12 and 25% won't renew next quarter. That helps them with like their staffing model and projections for the year ahead. And then in terms of the actual numbers that we've settled on in Chicago, this is the bane of my existence, but when Lyft signed the contract with CDOT to operate our bike share system, my predecessors at CDOT negotiated the ability of Lyft to raise the prices by 10% every year without the city's approval. And guess what they've done? Every year since they signed that contract. Well, that is why we froze pricing. We understood that runaway pricing in terms of we saw the consumer price index skyrocket, but we didn't see wages skyrocket during the pandemic, and we understand that. I understand that. I didn't have a Divvy membership until 9 months ago, honestly, because I was like, it's extremely expensive, and I was taking casual rides. I had my own bike. But when we launched this $99 membership, I took advantage of it. I don't get free Divvy rides. I took advantage of it, and I've saved over $1,000 in the last 9 months by having that membership. And so while I do, I'm not going to assume what you were inferring, but I do think that the membership model is not the way for everyone, and a municipal model is something that is being explored by more and more of our peer cities throughout North America. Something that I know New York is extremely interested in better understanding. And so I think that looking at a model in the future that does not have a membership would be fantastic. And thank you, Remel, for your work on that front. And I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on the pricing, because I know I've got a lot to say, but.
I mean, to your point, that is why the structure of the Go Hub is exactly the way that it is, so that everyone needs access to transit. And we want to be the least path of resistance to that access. So we don't want to create another barrier. So I don't know much about why the fee is chosen, but because we understand the current structure, it's the reason why we're pushing for that, and we're not looking at it per se as a generating revenue item for our mobility hub.
Hope that answers your question.
I just wanted to add, so, if you pay the annual fee, but the classic bikes, you get to ride for 45 minutes. And exactly. And so if you paid per minute, I mean, if you average that out, that's like, I don't know, 10 or 20 minutes a week. So it's, but if you're going to ride an e-bike, then you're going to pay more than that. But with the membership, it's significantly less expensive. So, but that's, you get the classic bikes. That's. Now my only problem is that the 99 should go to the people renewing. So, because it's kind of insulting every year to repay, to keep re-upping, and it's like, well, so if I like quit for a month, I'd get like $40 off.
You are preaching in the choir. You're preaching in the choir. I wish that it could have gone to that. That was a decision made by people much higher up than me. But we were proud of the $99 membership we could offer new and return members. We think that's a good way to get people's feet back in, so they understand the value proposition. But $100, $143, that is a shitload of money for a lot of people, and we understand that, which is why we have worked with Lyft to commit to adding a net increase of 500 new members to our $5 Divvy for Everyone membership. Doesn't cover everything. You still have to pay per minute fees, not for pedal bikes, and you have to have a major credit card that you've attached your membership to. But for every person that they don't, so they have to have 500 net new members in that program this year. If they get 499, they owe us $250 for that one person. They did not get shy of 500. So we have this new way to force them to prioritize this program that hits them in the pocketbook. And I want it to be $1,000 for every member, but we settled on $250. So yeah, thank you for your comment, though. I agree.
Question for Cook County. I'm super excited about the potential for suburban bike share. I know as someone who doesn't have a car, there are so many things where like I want to go to it in the suburbs and I can get to the metro, and then there's just no way to get from the metro to where I want to go. With that being said, I couldn't quite tell exactly from your presentation, is this specifically being looked at as an expansion of Divvy, or could it potentially be through other things? One of the things that really resonated with me from the Equiticity presentation was like the sort of per minute, A to B model does not really work for all trips, and I think that's maybe especially true the more low density you get. With the dockless e-bikes in the city, there's no guarantee if you take a dockless e-bike that it's going to be in the same place you left it when you got back. And if I'm going to somewhere more remote out in the suburbs, I really want to make sure that there is a way for me to get back to the metro station. And so I'm curious what the thoughts are for implementation along those ends.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we feel that a one system approach is best. So expanding the Divvy network out would be the preferred thing. I know so far with both the City of Evanston and City of Chicago, they're individual contracts in order to have the Divvy program as operated through Lyft. So that would likely be the way that it would happen into the future, but we're not there yet quite. So there is also opportunity for another vendor to come in and do it technically, but I think we would all prefer that single system, to have the Divvy system be it.
Are we out of time, Jane?
We can do one more, right?
Hi, this question's for David. With the loop experiencing conversions and a potential influx of residents and transition of the neighborhood from a commercial corridor, how do you expect capacity, ridership trends, and mobility in the loop in general to potentially evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
So Fortunately, my new role at CDOT is overseeing plan developments and TDM studies. And so what we've done over the last year or two, me and my colleague Kyle, right here at front, have worked with the team at CDOT and DPD, the Department of Planning and Development, that oversee these conversion projects to make sure that if we are adding, 3,900 new units downtown, that each of these projects considers sponsoring a divvy station as part of a mitigation strategy, as part of a TDM strategy, et cetera. So we've changed a lot of the rules and regulations around that and the expectations. Some of those are public, some of those aren't. A lot of that's just negotiations with developers, but we're certainly doing that. And then we get the applications for the initial proposals from developers to review way before the public sees them. And so we work with them immediately, or our team works with the developer or DPD on moving an existing divvy station or adding a new one there. So it is top of mind. We have an order for several thousand new docks on the way that should have arrived recently to add more capacity in downtown. But yes, we are on it as best as we can be.